Assalamu alaikum to one and all those who are seeing this video. I am Fazel Qadir of 2nd BCom from New College. In this video, I am going to explain about overhead apportion method. First of all, we have to know what is overhead expenses. Overhead expenses refers to the ongoing business expenses not directly attributed to creating a product or services. In other words, overhead expenses are expenses which you have to pay for to keep your company in a running manner. Here are some of the examples of overhead expenses. Expenses such as rent, accounting, taxes for assets and machineries, repairs and maintenance of machinery, human resources, utilities, accounting, etc. are the examples of overhead expenses. Classification of overhead expenses. Classification of overhead expenses under three major terms: by function, by behavior, by element. By function, we can classify overhead under four major types: production overhead, administrative overhead, selling overhead, and distribution overhead. Production overhead are expenses which are incurred in the process of production, such as wages given to a labor operating a machinery. Administrative overhead or overhead expenses given to a administrative process. Selling overhead or overhead which are used to expenses which are used to selling a product. The best example for this is advertisement. Distribution overhead, expenses which are incurred in the process of distribution are known as distribution overhead. By behavior, we can classify overhead under two: fixed overhead and variable overhead. And by element, we can classify overhead under three: indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses. Indirect material are material which are indirectly incurred in the process of production. Indirect labor are labor which are indirectly incurred in the process of production. Indirect expenses are expenses which are incurred indirectly in the process of production. Overhead apportionment. Overhead apportionment is the process in which the overhead expenses are apportioned equally for each departments of a factory. For example, a factory has 4 departments. The rent of the factory cannot be included only in one department expenses. It should be apportioned to all 4 departments equally on certain basis. Overhead apportion methods. There are 2 methods. First one is primary overhead apportionment and second one is secondary overhead apportionment. Primary overhead apportionment. Primary overhead apportionment is is a stage where overheads are apportioned to all departments in the organization. The objective at this stage is to allocate common overhead to all cost centers that have benefited from the cost using fair or equitable basis. Secondary overhead apportionment. The secondary overhead apportionment is a process of reapportionment of service departments' overheads to the production department. The objective of this stage is to ensure that only production department bear all overhead costs and which will eventually be charged to the product. This is because while there is a direct link between the product produced and the production department, there is no such link between the production and service department. This method is also known as overhead redistribution method. Basis of apportionment of overhead expenses: factory rent on floor area, factory lighting on light month floor area, power kilowatt hours and horsepower, depreciation of plant and machinery in machine hours and value of plant and machinery, insurance of apportion on basis of value of stock, indirect material or apportion on basis of direct material, supervision or apportion on the basis of number of employees, repairs to plant or apportion on basis of value of plant, insurance of building or apportion on basis of value of building and floor area, Employers' contribution to ESI are apportioned on wages of each department and number of employees. Employers' contribution to PF are apportioned on wages to each department and number of employees. Store expenses are apportioned on the basis of materials consumed by each department, and sundry expenses are apportioned on the basis of labor hour and direct wages. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you all like this video.